Okay, call this City of Alpine Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order at 5:30 PM, November 18th, 2024. City Secretary, do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do have a quorum with 4 members present.
Public comments. I do not see any public here. So we will skip the public comments. Public hearings. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak to public hearing to obtain citizens on 2024-1201? I do not see any public here to comment on that. Moving on, approval of the minutes of the previous board meeting. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
I record that motion to approve the minutes for the October 28th, 2024 meeting.
Second it.
Any
exceptions?
all ayes, any exceptions?
Aye.
Vote.
Aye.
It is 4 ayes. Okay, discussion items. City manager, would you like to read the discussion item?
Sorry,
I hope you're not gonna read all 79 pages.
I'm not.
Keep the comments down.
So this evening we have on the agenda to discuss an update to Appendix C zoning to the Alpine Code of Ordinances, including amendments to zoning requirements and land use regulations within the city limits. I am gonna allow the Building Services Department to walk you through their changes. They're the ones who've been working on it. And then I'm just gonna take some notes and a friendly reminder that we do have a planned planning and zoning city council workshop for December 3rd. To go over some of these recommendations.
What time is that?
At 4.
At 4 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
So I will let Robert and Jessica take over so they can walk you through their suggestions.
Okay, the way we're gonna work it, each commissioner will take the floor and ask questions. So this will be a question and answer one at a time, and then we will hold our discussions with each other. Or once again with the city, but we will start with the city. Here we'll start. Could you give us, either one of you, I don't care who, let's move this chair. Okay, now that's good. Oops. Oh,
Just
We don't need that window.
here.
a lot of work apparently, I can tell went into this. Can you give us, both of you, either one at a time, what your gist of the major changes would be? And how did this come about and what kind of work went into it?
So it came about when Commissioner Laxton wanted to have some stuff updated. And from my understanding and from the director of the city manager, we wanted to go ahead and just do the whole thing. We also realized that the definitions there's a lot of definitions that needed to be added and then some that needed to be updated or revised, if you will. And so we just took on the entire ordinance to have it 100% updated and hopefully meet the intent and direction that she was wanting it to go for those. I think it was just 2 or 3 items that she wanted to have edited inside that ordinance.
And then, a lot of the little bits that I've been dealing with over the years, just things that came up, like having the definition for what a carport is, and just basic things that are not in our ordinance needed to be added in. So over the years, I've added things in that need to be updated in ordinance, and since it's so old, we've just kind of added that on top of the deficiencies with like, what is a dwelling unit? What is this? And taking it straight from the definitions from our ordinance rather than having our old definition from 1978. We're taking it directly from the definitions from the building code that we use. That way they're marrying each other. And it's just no questions on what we're talking about when it comes to the ordinance and code.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. One, there's a lot of great definitions in there, but there's no defining size for a parking lot. So the US size standard parking lot is 20 by 9. Would you want to include something like that?
It's in the building code.
It's in the building code,
Yeah,
okay,
so,
so it
yeah.
doesn't need to be in here.
It doesn't,
Okay.
no, it doesn't, it's just that what's allowable would be, so what we found actually doing the short-term rentals. Was one off-street parking, but actually in our residential code, it brings up, there's two, right? For every house that's built, you should have two.
Yeah.
And so we updated it in our ordinance, for every new house that's built, it should have two off-street parking
Mhm,
spots.
mhm.
And originally it was one, so just taking the issues that our ordinance have that's old, that doesn't match this, so that it matches what we're actually working from our actual building codes and mirroring it there.
Yeah.
And then the actual dimensions would be based off of what is in our ordinance. It's based off the occupancy too. So like commercial, you have a different size parking
Right.
space compared to residential. So we build everything off of to put all that information in our ordinance, we'd have books.
Yeah, it'd be like this.
So we just
big.
refer to the code when somebody puts in plans. So
Okay,
if it's residential, it'd be based off here. If it's commercial, it's based off here.
And that would be
Um,
seen during a plan review.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and make sure that.
And since this is being presented by you, the city and not the city council, any recommendations we have, it goes back, or whatever action we take, it goes back to you as the city, right? This does not get passed on to the city council yet, because they're gonna hold another meeting. There's just discussion on it, right? Okay. And then I had another question on the C1 and C2 over here. The changes that you have to C0.
What page you?
I'm on page 55.
Okay.
So we don't have a residential district anymore. It's just single family district.
I'm sorry, take it down.
On page 55, all the way at the top,
Mhm.
you cut out residential.
I'm looking for that.
Oh, out of C1 neighborhood commercial district.
Instead of C2 business. Here's 55.
C1 business district.
Page 55 looks
All
like.
commercial.
Oh.
Mhm.
Oh, yes, my 55 looks different too. All 55s look
All of
different.
them
Unless
look
we go
different.
into the-
Okay.
It's probably because the ordinance itself has page numbers and then the packet update.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
And I just noticed the packet actually goes to page 46 and 59 and then jumps to page, well, that's 47.
Okay, you're in C1A?
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
I'm on this, I'm
Yeah.
tracking now where you're at. So that's gonna be C2, the business district
right.
that you're looking at, that we're moving residential. So we're trying to
Yeah.
preserve our commercial areas so that
Okay.
they're not getting bought and then used for a residential home. You'll see that you can still do R2 and then we added R3 because those are gonna be
I didn't.
So those are
high density, and so we didn't want to negate from that being put in.
And then we're also making adjustments for, I don't know if we call them tiny houses,
Casitas?
and we
Yeah.
got
There's
casitas,
two
but,
different things.
so those are two
Yeah.
different things, casitas and
Right.
tiny.
So a tiny house is, I think it's 400 square feet and under.
Considered an RV.
Right.
Yeah, and then they can be considered RVs, recreational vehicle. And so what we were trying to do, and this was between Jessica and Commissioner Laxton. They wanted to have smaller footprints for a house. Allowed for more economical
Housing.
development, if you will, yeah. And so. Right now, our minimum is 1,000 square feet as it stands, but this would allow it to go down to 500.
Only in the R4.
Yeah, only in our.
But only in R4.
Only in
Right,
R4.
only in
So
R4.
the same lot that you could buy and put a manufactured home on,
Mhm.
which is the lowest classification of housing.
Mhm.
We would open up the opportunity for people that bought property in R4 to build a smaller footprint home.
Mhm.
That, and not necessarily have to have a mobile home.
So somebody couldn't in R1 just knock their house down and not build a
No,
casita.
you could,
No.
you'd have to stay within the square footage requirements of an R1,
Okay,
which would keep, it would protect that neighborhood in the higher end housing. It's only for the housing that is allowable R4, which would be,
Right.
it's called mobile home, but I talked about changing it to mixed.
Yeah.
Residential.
And that's not to say that somebody that has a house that doesn't want to do like Guy Fielder has and have like an auxiliary dwelling unit in the backyard. You could build one, we're leaving that in here.
Yeah, I saw
because
that, I
It's
saw
such
that,
a common occurrence here in Alpine. We
Mhm.
don't want to
Yeah, we
cut that
want
out.
more rentals,
Yep,
so,
Yeah,
like, you'll still be able to have an ADU in your backyard.
right.
It doesn't remove that, it's just shrinking the square footage for a single family home in an R4. Is pretty much what we're trying to accomplish, is more people being able to build a smaller house in one of our zones, because right now, the minimum is 1,000, and most people that come in that's either retired or working class, they're like, I don't need a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house.
Right, yeah, I got that.
Yeah. And that's,
I got it. What is?
No, no,
considered-
wait, you don't have this floor yet.
I thought you were done.
He's
No,
gonna
no.
let us each
No,
go
no.
individually.
Each go individually. So I will call you.
Yeah.
So I'm done with my questions. Commissioner Nix?
What was the square footage of an ADU? Minimum, just curious if there is,
There
because
is.
I haven't seen it. Okay, so it could be the 500.
Right,
square
yeah,
foot,
so
could be
as
the-
long as it doesn't put you over your pervious and coverage.
Okay, which
you-
that increased a little bit. Maybe,
no, it stayed the same.
It did?
That's with impervious.
okay, okay,
I think the only, I don't think we mess with impervious coverage at all.
Okay.
It's the same.
maybe it was percentage of structure. On something,
I think it stayed the same too.
something changed. Okay, how does this affect current life in Alpine? For like the RV is more specific on like,
RVs would still only be allowed in the zone that they're allowed in right now, which would be C1A and C2A.
okay,
But because tiny homes are not identified by an actual building and more people are looking at them, that's where they would go, is it an RV park?
Yeah.
And so that's why we were talking about encouraging that type of housing. To
yeah,
be, either you could have an RV park with tiny houses, or you could have an R4 with a small cottage, but you can't put a tiny house on
okay.
an R4, because it's still considered an RV.
How does all the changes, does it affect many people in the community, like, or prior stuff is grandfathered? if
It'll
anything?
be, I mean, it would be considered non-conforming, but it's not gonna affect anybody in a negative way.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
nothing we're proposing is gonna be,
okay,
It's addition to what
Inhibited,
already
yeah.
exists.
okay,
It's really-
okay, it's
gonna-
just
yeah.
defining more,
yeah, so all we did was really clean up some of the stuff that. Either we couldn't understand, whoever edited it before was trying to get at. And so we went straight with what the book says. Or we added things such as like being able to do the carports and what the definitive, because we have people come in all the time asking and. You know, can I do a carport like this and where can I put it on my property? So we put it in here, so it's black and
Okay.
white and they know and we can point them into a direction. Let's see, I'm looking through the R's.
I do have to say, though, there is one part that was removed that would affect people long later on, but not right now, because what's existing can exist. Is the removal of the option for manufactured housing communities.
oh,
Um,
Did it,
We removed all of that only because of the major issues. First of all, nationwide, people are removing them. In almost every state, they're removing them because they're so hard to maintain. With having somebody own a manufactured home, they get dilapidated. Then, like, even with the title transferring with like the Maverick Inn behind there, nobody could find the title to who owned what, and it's hard to get rid of them because they're considered real houses. And so, just in general, on code enforcement side of things, not one of the manufactured community houses are either in compliance with life, health, safety, zoning, or just in general, like they're not registered properly based off the ordinance that we have in place. So overall, they're messy and they're really hard to maintain, and I think that in the, like, what's here now can exist, but just they wouldn't be able to continue.
yeah, okay,
And then I see what you're saying, so we did increase the impervious coverage for R2.
mm-hmm,
Okay. I think we got that from another city, maybe is what we compared it to. Or it was based off of having, or we did the math maybe? I don't
Yeah,
know.
we did the math to
Figure it out.
incorporate 2 units and then the driveways and stuff for those
Okay.
units. And so that's where we came up with that.
okay. And one more question, when we were talking about commercial living, like, you guys wanted to take out the R1s?
Mhm.
So does that affect like let's see, I think a lady downtown that owns a building, I think it's her residence. as well, like in the historic area.
She's
So-
in a C1, right?
Okay,
She's not
so
C2, so C2
it's
is gonna
just
be
for
like the
C2.
heart of our downtown.
Oh,
It's
okay.
Yeah.
building an R1, so you're not gonna put new construction in as a single family
Okay.
house.
Yeah.
What exists already is there.
Yeah,
It's the building, it's actually like, where Napa, the old Napa building was that dropped. You can't put a single family residential house there. It's pretty
Okay.
much what that's
Okay.
saying, like. You have
but they could build an apartment if somebody were to buy the,
Yeah.
just thinking of
Or
investors wanting to, I
Yeah.
want to
Or if
build
they wanted to
downtown.
do like a commercial space
And then have
downstairs
a
and then
house.
a
Okay.
apartment
That's mixed use,
upstairs,
yeah.
more.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
more than able,
Just not only house.
right, yeah.
Okay, that's all for now.
Mr. Griffith?
Just a quick question, maybe, I guess it is, when you're considering a manufactured home, there's apparently a technical difference between a modular home and a mobile home.
Mhm.
How do y'all perceive those? Is there, do you consider a modular home in the same league as a site-built home, or is it, because I know it's not a mobile home?
Right, yeah, so I believe if I remember correctly, and don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure that it's deeded like a what would be considered a stick-built R1.
Is that
So
right?
that's why they're allowed in an R1. Like,
Oh, they are
I
allowed in
personally,
R1,
me
okay.
personally, I'm in an R1 and I'm in a modular home.
Okay.
Don't they have to have a permanent foundation? I'm sorry.
Yes, and so that's because of the
do.
way they're designed, and so when they're set like a parent beam home. If you go under my house, it's all parent beam underneath and it can't be moved again.
No, I have a modular home too, and it's got two slabs underneath it
Mhm.
that they tie it down to.
Yeah,
They have to be stamped as those too. They
Yeah.
you can't just say, I'm getting a modular home.
right,
And so you have to submit what you're actually buying when you submit your plan. So if it's coming in as a manufactured home, then, and you're an R1, we'd have to redirect and say, no, you can't put a manufacturer, you have to put a modular, it has to be stamped and licensed as well.
yeah, and without getting into the weeds, they're significantly structurally more sound.
Yeah.
but
You'll
yeah.
notice that the exterior walls, the roof and the floor are all thicker. The insulation's a lot better. They do positive pressure tests on them to make sure that they're sealed properly and all of that before
Okay.
you can occupy. 'em.
Okay, so it doesn't affect them.
No, yeah, it doesn't affect them
Okay.
at all.
I'm just curious. That's all.
That's it.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
Mr. Fielder?
would you like to take a break? I've got a list. Or we can get started. But thank you for letting me go last, because at some point you may want to call timeout.
Let's do it
It'll
too.
be up to me.
All right, guys, so just so everybody understands, I have written patents. I am the inventor of record on 30 patents. I have edited technical manuals, I've edited service manuals. I've done a lot of work in this particular area. And my philosophy's always been do the best job you can the first round so that you don't have to make changes later. So I've got changes in here that I flagged that are just grammatical.
Mhm.
And you may want me to skip over the grammatical things. And then I have technical questions and definitional questions. How would y'all like to proceed?
We'll just go with your,
Yeah, let's.
you're questioning the city right now.
Okay.
You're not
So,
making any recommendations.
no, I'm not making recommendations. So page 3 of 59, and by the way, my confusion a while ago is the pages each have 2 sets of numbers. And we're gonna use the little set. In the
ordinance
middle.
numbers,
The one in the middle?
The one in the middle, page 3 of 59 in the middle, and then it's basically the second full paragraph down, which were lawful before this ordinance. And then the second line from the bottom, nonconformity shall not change. Does that need to have a B in there? Shall not be changed? Or shall not change?
Are you looking at page 59?
3 of 59.
This is how close to the yellow is
Three,
it?
page 3.
It's actually the
59.
it's the very first yellow
Never mind.
in that, on that page, changed or. So is it be changed or not change?
Be changed.
Should not be changed.
Yeah, you need to add B to it.
All right. See, that one was easy, except finding it. All right, on page 5. So number A at the top, no existing structure devoted to or used, not permitted by this ordinance in the district in which it is located shall be enlarged, extended, constructed, reconstructed, moved, so forth. So you don't mention remodeling there. I know that you mentioned remodeling in another place, but should you mention remodeling there? And here's another piece of advice, guys. You have tried to make lists, for example, and then you put a list. In everything I've ever done where we tried to put a list, we always preface the sentence by way of example, comma, but not limitation, semicolon, and then you start the list. Because it's impossible to make a comprehensive list. It's just impossible. You can use some examples, but you need to say that these are examples and it's a limited list so that you don't end up arguing over something that you omitted.
Yeah.
Something that may not even exist today.
That's a part of the existing ordinance. We
We
didn't
did
change
edit
that
that.
portion. Yeah, we
Okay,
just left that as is.
all right.
Only the yellow and the red.
Only the yellow.
You only want me to do the yellow and the
Only
red?
the yellow and the red.
Okay.
All we're talking
I
about.
do have, and Jessica, you and I have discussed this quite often, actually, visibility at intersections.
Yeah.
Okay, and I don't really have any problem with what you have written. But I do have a problem with the fact that TxDOT does not comply with this ordinance.
Well, this is
Well,
residential,
that's not what.
residential districts is for visibility. It's not
Yeah,
for
it's your section 6.
Visibility of intersections in residential districts,
Yeah, but I know that the TxDOT is on the highway.
that's not residential district.
Okay,
Where are we discussing?
it's section 6, page 5-9, right at the very bottom, supplemental district regulation.
Oh, you're on a different 5, probably.
It
That's
was
page
actually-
6.
Yes, they're over in the commercial.
Matt, can I make a comment?
Yes.
So they've updated a portion of it, but if there's other areas that need to be updated, that was just part of this discussion.
Yeah.
They just updated where they thought needed to be updated, but I think we did have discussion council as part of the original session to update the whole thing, is to have that overview of the whole policy.
Yeah.
Or ordinance, sorry.
Okay, all right, so I'll go back up a little bit. So
Okay.
still on page 5 of 59,
Okay.
part D. Grammatically, the last full sentence that goes across shall not thereafter,
In yellow.
she just said she wanted to include things not in yellow.
The discussion is the whole
Yeah.
ordinance.
So anything y'all want to change or amend or whatever, we can discuss it here and we can
Okay.
go back to this and make changes if it's decided, yeah.
Yeah, so again, D.
Add remodeled,
So except in conformity with, I would add the word current there. Because there's several different revisions of regulations. And some things are grandfathered. And so I think if you just with the current regulations, which means the ones that are currently being enforced, that just adds a little point of clarity. I'm moving down to paragraph 6, repairs and maintenance. The paragraph that's not indented, if a non-conforming structure or portion of the structure containing the non-conforming use, in that paragraph, you haven't mentioned historic districts. How, are you planning to deal with historic districts? Are you planning to exempt historic districts? How are you going to deal with historic districts? Because we're fixing to create one.
I'm sorry, what paragraph are you? in?
6,
It's,
repair and maintenance.
Oh.
That first
Second paragraph of that.
Mhm.
so again, all I'm saying there is, if you want it to be as complete as possible, you may want to consider something dealing with historic districts.
In the repair and maintenance.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think personally, if we're gonna do an historic district, we should probably put something in specifically for the historic district.
Okay. All right. And we are planning to put in historic districts. So
Yeah.
would we want to put it in now, or would we want to come back later and revise this?
Yeah. What's your recommendation there?
So I would recommend doing as much now.
Yeah.
Because it does take time to get ordinances, one, reviewed on an agenda and approved.
And codified.
The same thing, I do want to bring it to everyone's attention that this is also gonna hopefully work in line with our comprehensive plan. And so we kind of want everything to flow together. So the historic district, this has been on planning and zoning's agenda for, I would probably say 2 years.
Longer than that.
Longer than that is probably true.
Trust me, it is.
So I would at least addressing the historic district. It doesn't have to be very specific, but maybe we do have something in there so that it helps with, okay, we are going that direction.
And again, just to self. If you go to the dictionary and you look up the word anal retentive, my picture's there. So,
Can't you put something in there that this?
He's got the
Okay,
questions right
okay,
now.
I got it, I got it.
So what we can do, guys, we can use one of our restricted, or reserved areas, and we can put in, regulations
okay,
specifically.
all right,
for
again,
historic district.
these are, none of
If you'd like
these are
to go there.
demands, they're all
No, no, no.
suggestions.
Right, and it's a very good and valid suggestion, but you know, if that's the way y'all collectively would like to go about it and do it like that, or if you think we should piece it through there where it applies, I just feel like it'd be easier to have historic district and then this is it, the rest of it
Absolutely,
doesn't
I
apply.
completely agree,
It'd
and
make it a
you
lot
refer to that section.
Yeah,
When
right,
you put things in several places, you end up with contradictions.
right, or redundancy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you ready to move on? Okay.
You got an continual.
Okay, so we moved to page 6 and it's in the yellow. And if you look at paragraph 8, carports, second sentence from the bottom, unless constructed on, I think that should be of non-combustible materials. You can construct it on non-combustible, but if I build it on dirt, it's non-combustible. Does everybody see what I'm talking about? Currently says on, and I'm thinking that should be
Oh,
of.
yeah, there's a typo.
Okay,
It should be of non-constructive.
okay, and then the next sentence down, regulations apply with corner lots, maximum of 2 carports per lot. Do you really mean carports or 2 car? 1 carport, 2 cars?
Where did you get that from? I think that came right out of the code book.
I think it was more so to keep it down from being more than, I mean, obviously the impervious coverage has to come into place, but I think more so it was. I don't know if it was in the ICC.
If your carport is just a skeletal with a roof, the floor of a carport is permeable, actually. And water's gonna run in there and soak into the ground. So you're going to try to make the shadow of the roof of a carport be impervious?
No, so it's gonna be whatever's underneath it. So if you have packed base or something, we're not counting that as impervious. It's just gonna be if you pour
Okay.
concrete underneath.
All
that
right.
concrete.
But again, my question was, did you mean a 2-car carport or did you actually mean 2 physical carports?
I wanna say it was 2 carports.
Okay, all right, if that's what you meant. All right, if we move to page 8 of 59, home occupations. And the question I want to ask there deals with really as an owner more than as code. Because I think everybody here is familiar with that house that was built across the street from True Value, Morrison's. They wanted custom cabinetry. And that house sat there for over 18 months waiting for that custom cabinetry. According to this, they would have expired and had to reapply for a permit. Is that the intent?
Or home occupation.
Home occupation?
Well, it's paragraph 5, expiration of building permit.
Oh, not
And-
in, above.
Oh, above it,
Section eight.
above it,
Yeah,
not in the.
not in that. I'm sorry.
Oh,
That's
okay.
where I wrote it.
Okay, I see
180
what,
days is a
yeah,
normal thing.
so 180 days comes directly out of the code book.
Yes, I
So-
understand that, but
Yeah,
we're
you can-
Alpine, we're away from
Yeah, that's
everywhere.
fine. You can apply for
Extension.
an extension.
And you have to pay for the fees and everything all over again?
If you have,
No.
if you have a inspection in between your 180 days, it makes it go another 180 days. So if they're still having other inspections in between there, they're gonna have plumbing, mechanical, other things.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, that's bumping your building permit out another 180 days every time you have an inspection. So
Okay.
very rarely when you're doing a build, the cabinets aren't even gonna be that big of a deal, because they have other inspections in between that anyways.
Yeah, but again, I was just
See-
going by the wording. It says if no activity occurs.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
and I also don't see a building official not approving a extension just because you're waiting on custom cabinets.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right, and then
You can get it fine.
this one is the next one down, which is using your home as a business. And the clarification I'm looking there, it's paragraph A. It says one employee, one person shall be employed. I would interpret that as the owner. That means that
No, no more than,
Other than the.
No more
members
than
of the family residing.
other than the families residing, no more than one person shall be employed by the home occupation. Well, that would be the owner.
No.
So I couldn't hire an assistant?
No, you get one person.
So it's, yeah, so if you had, say you have 3 people that are living with you that are residing on that premise, they can all be your employee, but it's one person that's not living in that home.
Okay, but I'm thinking that, okay, I'm just trying to make sure that we're distinguishing that that employee is not the owner who's running the business.
Right, well, they would be,
They'd be living there. The
They'd be
owner
living
would
there.
be living there because it's a home occupation.
Okay, and that's the qualifier you're highlighting. This confused me. Do you think it would
It's on
confuse
the
someone
next-
else?
yeah, that's directly out of this book
okay.
right here.
And again, this is a more general question,
Sure.
but it's in this same section. So you talk about the owner occupant must reside and must be the primary business occupant of the residence. So based on what we did for Tara, she wouldn't qualify because she doesn't live there.
She didn't get it at home occupancy. She got special use, conditional use permanent.
Okay, I realize that, but,
But yeah, she wouldn't qualify as a home occupation. then.
okay. And then the other question that just came to my mind during all of this, some people are going to convert a garage into a business. And they're going to have customers that come to see their business. Are we going to require them to put in bathroom facilities?
See, that's where I bang my head against the wall with home occupations. And it would go underneath the IBC under, I think it's chapter 508. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it's right in there, under living/work use. And it doesn't require it because it's considered a home occupation. So it's this weird limbo between a commercial, because it's not commercial,
Right,
right? So therefore, that's why it's so restrictive, because once you start getting over a certain percentage of that building, you're now changing the occupation of, the occupation of that home. And so now it has to meet commercial building code, which I'm sorry, that none of these homes are going to. And so if it's under that percentage, and then you'll also see that you're only allowed to have one person there, you can't have retail or anything like that. So if you're gonna have a customer come by, it's only gonna be one. And so, based off of what I interpret the codes, you don't have to have a bathroom in there.
okay, all right, I just wanted to bring it up.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring it up is because during COVID, the lady that cut my hair started running her business out of her garage.
Sure.
And I had to go leave the garage and walk over to the house to go to the bathroom. So I just.
Yeah.
This one is more of a generic question. When did morals become part of the public?
What page you on?
Well, section 14, page 14, section 14, provisions of ordinances. I've always heard health, safety, and general welfare. When did morals become part of it?
Where are you reading in?
Top
It's
paragraph.
above
Top
specific,
paragraph.
Yeah, 2 above.
14 out of 59.
second line.
I got it. Thank you.
And morals is showing up several places in here along with health, safety, and welfare.
That has been in it.
I understand it's been there, but my question still is, are we thinking somebody's gonna build a brothel? What's the
They
deal with
probably did at
morals?
one time.
Okay, again, I've lived in 5 different cities and I've gone through codes and ordinances. I've built homes in those cities and it's never been, I have seen property value added for health, safety, welfare, and value of property. I have never seen morals.
It's an old
The
term.
Wild West
Yep.
here.
Welcome to Alpine.
All right, just wanted to point it out. Okay, and again, we're talking about, I'm on page 15. And I'm right below that first long line of red text. It says an incidental subordinate building. And you actually added as an example, a detached garage. And I see later where you actually defined a garage separate from a carport. So I just put a question there, do you want to include a carport? I think not.
No.
But I just wanted to,
For accessory building?
a subordinate building.
What is
Page
that?
are you on?
I'm on
It's an
page
accessory building.
15.
15 to 59.
No, what is a subordinate building?
Well,
Just give it.
they gave an
Yeah.
example
So
as a
that's-
garage.
Yeah, the,
My casita would probably be a subordinate building if I was a,
Something lesser than the primary.
Ah,
right, yeah, so that's an accessory building, it's an insubordinate
Okay.
building.
and you do talk about accessory buildings. Did you talk about
Yeah.
But yeah,
subordinate?
so your casita would not be an accessory building because it specifically says not to be used as a habitable space.
Okay,
So yours would be under an ADU, an
okay,
accessory
but you
dwelling.
bring up another question. You
Sure.
called it a subordinate building. Should it have been considered an accessory building?
It is an accessory building.
Oh,
That's-
it's,
that's the word,
okay,
yeah. That's just
I'm
just part
sorry,
of the
I'm sorry.
definition, no, you're fine,
I've looked at this stuff till I'm blue in the face.
yeah, you'll go.
So here it says any change, addition or modification, an apartment house. No, where did I?
mhm.
Any public way through. Somewhere in here, you talked about if there is a change in the habitants or the occupants, something needs to happen. Any change, addition, modification, or construction, occupancy or use. So I guess that's an alteration. Occupancy is there. And I'm a young couple, me and my wife, we have a baby. There's been a change in the occupancy of that structure. Am I supposed to do something?
Your occupancy hasn't changed because it's still considered one family residential.
Okay, any change, addition, or modification in construction,
But if you're doing like
occupancy or
alteration, like
use.
changing a room that's not a bedroom into a bedroom, that would be changing the occupancy load of your building.
Correct.
That's what it would be in reference to.
But again, the way the sentence is constructed, I could just as easily read any change, addition, or modification in occupancy or use.
Or changing an attached garage into a habitable
Yeah,
space
or
would be
that too.
changing the occupancy. So that would be changing the occupancy of
Okay,
that space.
all right. Again, these are all just suggestions, but this confused me.
Yeah.
And
All
I
of these,
suggest
every
it may
single-
confuse someone else as
Sure.
well.
Every single definition that has been altered or added here came directly out of the definition.
Right,
for
and I see that you've
international
highlighted it.
Right,
So again, boarding house, you see just a few things down a boarding house.
Mhm.
The way you've written it, and you've tried to talk about the things that constitute a boarding house. I'm wondering if you should also include collection and paying of hot tax.
Well, this is just under definitions of what
Yeah.
it is.
Okay, all right. At canopy, just a typo. A roof structure constructed of fabric or other materials supported the building. Should be by. So you had Connex boxes, and again, this is in white. But earlier in this, you said Connex boxes shall not be used as dwellings. And here it says, except as provided herein. You've left an opening.
Yeah, so if you go to R4, they are allowable, Connex housing is allowable through, you have to go through a special use permit to do that. It has to go through planning, zoning and council, and nobody's ever done that, but it is an option, it has been an option for a very long time. So
Okay,
that's where that herein comes from, because it's not allowable to be in your backyard as it can be a storage container, but it can't be a residential house without going through the process of the R4.
okay. So far I haven't run across that caveat.
Yeah.
So, and I would say in the earlier part of the code where it says shall not. And then it says except as provided herein, that's a contradiction to me.
Page 6, number 9,
Page
that's
6.
for an accessory building, all of that.
Well, it's Connex. They talk about Connex. Okay, I'm getting to fewer and fewer orange tabs. Okay, you answered that one earlier. Okay, here's one that I've dealt with my neighbors. Page 21 of 59. And the specific definition is landscaping. And is everybody here familiar with my landscaping? Okay. I think you need to add something in here about not altering a watershed. Because people have watersheds that cross their properties. I have a watershed that crosses my property into Carla's. I could have built my flower beds and added to the water dumping in her yard. And I think that should be not allowed.
With
But-
proper setbacks you probably have a building that it has not the proper setbacks. You're built up on the property line from what you bought. Is that what you're talking about, or the water's?
No. I'm actually on a fourth of a city
Or
block.
the runoff naturally.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's
I
called,
thought you
what
meant
the
the building.
state of Texas calls a watershed. And watershed is the natural flow from rain. And people can alter watersheds, but watersheds have been historically forever. And, you know, if I alter a watershed and as a result of me altering the watershed, my neighbor floods, whose fault is it?
There is something in the ordinance, but it's not in the building ordinance. Cause we came up with it with. The owner of Blue Water was doing all of the work on the hill and it was messing with the people below him, even though he was outside of city limits. But he was collecting his own water, but it was causing all the work was causing their water to come down on their property different than before. I can't remember, but I know it's not in our building code, but there is something in the ordinance. I just not.
Okay,
I'll have to look
but
it up.
isn't this ordinance one that more people are gonna look at than just the building codes? And again, I'm not being
Really.
critical, but watershed's important, and you're talking about landscaping, and the number one cause of altering a watershed is landscaping. And if you don't do anything but mention it and then refer to the other part of the code, I really think that this is important enough that you should include something about a watershed. The state of Texas, if water has flown across my property for, I don't know, Megan, maybe you know, I want to say 100 years, but I don't think it's required to be that long. Somebody upstream cannot dam that water off and deny me of the water that I have had a right to for years and years and years. The same is true on a watershed. Someone cannot alter a watershed and cause my property to flood for the same reason.
Yeah,
And this is a Texas requirement.
right.
Yeah, on the building side of things, I know for us on our plan review, we look at like when it's a large build, we look at retention or detention ponds and things like that. Like the original site plan for building side, yeah, we do look into that, elevation, all of that. However, when it comes to natural runoff and your neighbors altering it because it's not structural, we don't even, like, you redid your landscaping, correct?
Mhm.
And none of those plans came through our department because it's not structural or has anything to do with building, right? It'd be a completely different area than what we're working with right here.
Right. And
So
again,
I would definitely look at it maybe from another ordinance and see if maybe,
but again, my question is, can you refer to that other ordinance here under landscaping?
My suggestion is you write up a separate paragraph.
Oh, I don't think we need
Says
to,
that.
separate. All we need to do is reference it, but.
Separate paragraph to do with the watershed.
Okay,
So, and then we can present that to the city.
the next question that I have is down here on the lot lines. A lot line is a boundary of a zoning lot. And you refer to a line across the front of the property, the midpoint of straight lines. And again, I own a piece of property on Murphy that's right where the street turns and curves. So my property is about 50 feet deep on Third Street and about 150 feet deep on Fourth Street. And there's a curve that gets from 150 down to 50. Where's the midpoint on the front of that property? Have I lost everybody again?
Picking
Yeah, I
up
don't
what
know
you
what
put
you're
down,
trying,
yeah.
what it, like,
It says right here, lot line, part A, depth of a lot line shall be considered to be the distance between the midpoints of straight lines connecting the foremost points of the side lot lines. In the foremost points, I would think of my property would be the two corners. When you say foremost, do you mean most prominently in the street?
it depends on your 911 addressing, like where you're,
No, I'm trying to ask you, where am I gonna define the midpoint on my property?
the depth.
Take an average.
Thomas gave me addresses for all this, but
Yeah, because you don't like if you saw this.
Cause there's a lot of trapezoidal shaped properties.
and yeah,
This one's gonna
You
be
take a.
site specific.
So. I know you can think of it.
and you know, again, everybody knows what a cul-de-sac is. I think the minimum width of the property, front of the property in a cul-de-sac is 40 feet. But because it's a cul-de-sac, it's a big, huge curve. So if I drew a line from the two prominent points, I would actually be drawing a line across the cul-de-sac. And again, is everybody following me? I'm
Are we talking about
Yeah.
depth, so you're talking about width?
talking about depth. I'm talking about the front of the property, which I think this is
Yeah,
talking
but
about.
it's not,
The front of the is the width.
yeah, I think we are understanding or what it's saying here differently, because it's saying the two straight lines that are connecting the frontmost portion of your property to the rearmost portion, so those would be the two side portions, two side lot lines, right?
Okay.
It'd be the midpoint of those.
And they could be.
Well, again, on my sidelines, by what you just explained,
Mhm.
on Fourth Street, it's 150 feet,
Yeah, that's fine,
and on Third Street, it's 50 feet.
right?
So again, where's the midpoint?
So it'd be 75 feet and 25 feet and then cut across, that's your midpoint.
Okay, and that's defining the distance,
The depth.
the depth.
Yeah, I don't-
Yeah, see, that's,
Yeah, we need to clarify depth and width.
and again, guys,
depth of a
if this
lot.
confuses me with all the experience that I have, I can't imagine what it's gonna do for the ordinary homeowner that's just trying to be compliant. And again, this is not yellow.
Right, but I mean, that definition's already out of this book, but I'm sorry, I'm just failing to see where your confusion is.
Okay, again, just a suggestion.
Okay.
Okay, so on page 27 of 59, you have variance. Does everybody see variance on page 27 of 59? It's right at the top and all of the red has been deleted and there's a yellow now. A deviation from the height, bulk, setback, parking, or other dimensioned requirements established by this code. And I think we could all agree that that is a pretty incomplete list of what variances can include. This is where I was talking about, you might want to add that statement.
By code, that's exactly what a variance is.
It only affects those areas?
Yes, sir.
Okay, if it only affects those 4 areas, then move on. The next yellow down, on same page, next yellow down, an open unoccupied space on a lot other than a court. What's a court?
It's enclosed.
Yeah.
Isn't that a courtyard?
Steve, look under definition.
They're defined.
Yeah, I don't see court being defined.
Yeah.
If you had said courtyard, I wouldn't have flagged it.
Neither one's defined. So court's something we definitely need to define.
There are courts in the code, but it's not in your definition.
Yeah. We just need to have a court to definition.
So you could add court for your definitions.
And,
Yeah.
you know, again,
A court is a space open or unobstructed to the sky located at or above grade level on a lot. And bound on 3 or more sides by walls of building.
yeah, and that's my definition, that's a courtyard. Typically, courtyards are enclosed
Yeah,
for privacy.
yeah. I can add court to the definitions.
Okay, that would work. Then on page 29 of 59. Again, section 2001. You're listing all these things that a bread and breakfast should do. And I'm just suggesting that you might want to add collect and pay hot taxes. And I bring it up because we're having a real issue, as is Marfa and Fort Davis, of bread and breakfast or short-term rentals actually collecting and paying their taxes. Okay. I only scanned, I ran out of time. I couldn't read with the same depth with the rest of it, so really don't have any comments there. I do have a couple of things that just came up during the rest of the discussions. I have not found parking lots in any of the allowed zoning. You've tried to add lists that are fairly comprehensive. I mean, some of your lists have got 30 items on it. Are we gonna have to get a special use permit to use one of these as a parking lot?
C1 of automobile parking lots.
Okay,
Page 47 of
what
50.
about M1? Or,
So anything that's,
C1A has
yeah,
it.
so
okay,
M1 is, you're permitted to do anything that's allowable in C1 in an M1.
or higher up the scale.
Yeah.
Right,
So,
so
okay.
M1 is,
All
yeah,
right.
exactly.
All right, now, Jessica said a minute ago about tiny houses.
Mhm.
And she said we classify them the same as RVs, but I've been in this meeting before when the classification said an RV has wheels. Now, mini house doesn't have wheels, so the an RV has wheels may not be the right definition any longer if a tiny house is going to be considered an RV.
Their own trailers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Are they?
yeah, that's
Tiny
dictated by
I don't know
DOT,
what
yeah.
definition you-
Oh, the ones I've always seen are on foundations.
Yeah.
So there are like park model homes that are
Yeah.
considered tiny homes. So if they sit in that category as a tiny home, then they'd be considered an RV because they're literally, you could put a skirting around them and stuff like that, but they're considered RVs. by
Okay,
code.
what if somebody builds one on a foundation?
It
So
would have to be within that 500 to 1,000 square
So
foot.
then the requirement just becomes it has to be a minimum of 500 square feet.
it'd
all right.
be considered like a modular, it wouldn't be like a manufactured home.
Okay, now this one is conditional versus special. Are we replacing special use permits with conditional use permits definition wise?
Where are we?
Well, you've been using conditional. I don't see special in here anywhere I
I
read.
know what page are you on?
Not on a page. This is a general question.
Oh.
Just, these are general questions now.
Okay, well,
I see conditional use permits used throughout this, but I don't see special use anymore.
Special use.
conditional use is what we find in our code.
Yeah.
And I think special use might be something. that
Is special something different?
They can be used interchangeably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We, short-term rental units are specifically by special use permit.
Yeah,
But our code is conditional use.
yeah.
Okay.
That
Everybody's
falls
okay.
under a different ordinance, I think.
The short-term rental is under a different ordinance.
So the special use might be somewhere else, not in this section.
Okay.
That's where I take it, right?
It is definitely located elsewhere. in the
Yeah.
code.
Okay. The other definition, again, general, the other definition that appears all over this is now, are we gonna start calling zones districts?
They've always been
Yeah.
called districts.
Yeah.
I can trot down to Austin right now and ask them, what are the
Outline
zoning
for
restrictions?
zoning map refers to them as districts, and it always has, at least
Okay.
for, long.
Are we gonna become planning and districts?
It's a zoning district, but no, the planning and zoning commission is not going to change.
All right, so again, I'm somebody that came here from elsewhere. I know what zoning is. I actually know what districts are because we have voting districts and we have wards. So this just confused me. Now, there's one more thing and then I'll be finished, I promise. They are 3D printing a hotel in Marfa.
They are doing. a whole
What are
bunch.
you guys going to do about that?
It's engineer stamp plans, I mean. it's-
I understand, yeah, is that gonna be a C1, a C1A, a C2?
For a
That,
hotel?
So the method of building isn't really dictated by zoning,
okay,
you know?
right.
I mean, to a point, you know, when it comes to a manufactured or a modular home, it would be the only difference, but if you're in an R1 and you're submitting plans and it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and you're gonna 3D print it, that, I don't care, as long as it's engineered and stamped, we're good to
Excellent,
go.
all right, so methods,
Yeah,
3D printing would be a method and you're
Right.
not trying to control methods as long as the methods are
Yeah.
compliant.
yeah, cause I've seen, there's forget the name of it, but they literally form your house up and they put the rebar and they literally pour concrete in the roof and the ceilings and it's a concrete home and it's poured. It's wild.
They did that, Or down Trilingual, lot, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and they're fire resistant. You can
Right.
put smartboard on it or.
They're doing
stucco
more of that
it
on the
and
coast as well.
Yeah, they're-
Steel reinforced concrete, it's
they're-
harder to blow down.
They're
Super cool building,
They're
but I mean,
post-tension.
method doesn't matter as long as it's,
Okay,
Needs to find-
right, yeah.
Alright.
Or if you want to 3D print brand new shopping center downtown. As long as you meet the setbacks and the intent of this code and our building code and it's stamped, we're good to go.
good, all right, because they also are making, setting up structures now out of styrofoam
Yeah.
and then spraying it with gunite
Mhm.
to make it rigid.
Yeah,
So again, that's a method. So as long as it's compliant,
Yeah.
you don't care.
they've been doing that with stucco for a long time. Where they
Paper-
do the
paper.
styrofoam and then scratch coat over it.
Okay, well, that's it.
Okay, we're gonna take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back and finish.
Thank you for tolerating me. Aren't you glad I only got to page 35?
Those buildings are putting down in Terlango, those are interestingly enough, that one called Venga. It's right
Oh,
there.
yeah, the coffee shop.
Yeah, it's right
Oh,
there at the
yeah.
entrance to the Ghost Town Road.
Sure.
I watched that thing going up slowly. It took them like 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why. I guess, who knows, but I was surprised to see because it was what they call post tension.
Oh, yeah.
As opposed to just concrete and steel, they had actual cables in there,
Mhm.
and that takes some specific skill.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just somebody putting up, concrete,
Mhm.
which I was surprised to see that they went through that kind of depth of
Yeah.
engineering.
I don't know why they would, so that's really more in like a seismic area. Is where you usually find.
I
that.
asked and I got deer in the headlights and I asked.
Yeah, it's for seismic activity is why it came about, you know,
Maybe just somebody
But I
knew
don't
how
know
to do
why
it
they-
real well or something.
I don't know.
It is odd. And there's those other ones, some of those smaller Airbnbs
Mhm.
are using a similar method.
Really?
Yeah, I
Instead of
mean,
just
you
using
can
the
always
rebar.
tell because you see the dots where they have
Mhm.
the cable coming through when they torque down.
Yeah, yeah.
You could see that from
I wonder
before
what
they
they
put a
did.
finish on it. And of course, Venga didn't even put a finish.
And the expansion, like it's probably a use for vibration and stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, so post tension came about for areas that have a lot of seismic activity, like in North Carolina on the west coast, that's why they use all that because of the fact that it can shift, and not be so rigid to where it just crumbles and falls apart. It has a little bit of resilience to it, but I mean, for them to use it down there, I feel like it'd be substantially more expensive than using traditional rebar.
Well, it is
And a
because
lot more labor.
the
intensive as
skill
well.
involved in doing that,
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta be trained on how to do that. And it's not just pouring concrete. Nothing that there's nothing wrong with it for you.
They may have done it. I know some people do it to try and win like architectural rewards and stuff like that.
Well,
That's
that's
like what's
true.
going on in Marfa, where they're 3D printing all of those because of all the publicity and stuff that they're getting from it.
Millions.
So, yeah.
But it's not cheaper.
No, heck no, it's like 1.8 million per.
Yeah,
body.
Actually, it's more expensive.
Yeah,
really,
it's
because it looks a lot more expensive.
But. you know,
It'll, but that's it.
They'll die
I think they're
down.
looking for economies of scale eventually, to where they have a neighborhood north
Yeah.
of Georgetown.
mhm,
It's a subdivision, actually.
Yeah, I don't know if you know who Mark Mullins is, but he's
Who's in?
Mark Mullins out of Midland. He's a big time architect in,
I've heard of him, yeah.
yeah, so, I manage a ranch on the other side of Marathon. He, knows Mark Mullins real well, and he was telling me that when he went to go look at those 3D printed homes and stuff, he was talking to Mark about it. And, he said they're really hoping that it kicks off and starts to become real popular to bring the cost of it down. So
I can understand that.
1.8 per home, you know.
No, I can understand that. They need to have what I'd call economies of scale.
Yeah, yeah.
That little hotel they're building, I call it, what hotel they're building, there's not economy of scale. Like, I'm talking about that subdivision north of Georgetown. That's size, that's significant.
Oh, yeah.
A friend of mine, his son he's about in his middle 30s. He works for Icon, which is the outfit, but he's up in Georgetown. It's an engineer for him. His specialty is the nozzle. His whole life is evolved around that nozzle.
Yeah,
But anyway, I was just, didn't know if you knew anything more about those post-tensioning structures down in, I don't know if anywhere in this whole region, anybody's put those up.
And so when I went through classes, they told me I would probably never see it. But they taught us about it and stuff because there's a bunch of people in there from North Carolina and they're all in seismic activity areas. But for us, we don't have enough of it and it's not significant enough to where we have to build to that. We have a Cat B wind zone, but I mean, other than that, that's all we really got to worry about. And so to me, that was super overkill unless they were doing it for.
Maybe you're right. Maybe
Award or
you're
something
right
like
about some
that,
kind of
which-
award thing.
Yeah.
Were they large monolithic pours or anything? Like,
Well, they
know PT, big pour, like big commercial structures or,
they weren't like tilt wall where they have a giant wall like you see a big
Mhm.
warehouse.
which a lot of times they'll do post tensioning in those.
They do.
Yeah,
Hey, well, you
But-
get by with less concrete for one thing,
yeah, it increases your
less
structure.
weight.
Get back to, we're gonna
You
finish
bet.
off discussion items. If there's, we'll go do one more round to see if any commissioners have any further comments. Commissioner Nix,
Nope, not at this time.
Commissioner Fuller,
I'm exhausted now.
Commissioner Griffith.
I've forgotten what mine.
Okay, we're gonna move on to number 6, action item. I will read it. Approve a recommendation to city council regarding replat 2024-1201. An application for replat allowing the applicant Li Feng Ni to reflect the updated ownership of a recently purchased portion of public property. The subject of property is located at or about 513 North 16th Street and is legally described as a replat of lots 6 and 7, block 8, Hamilton addition to Alpine as shown in subdivision plat on file. Envelopes 86 and 87, plat record of Brewster County, Texas. The record property owners are Li Feng and Xuan Duan Li. The parcel ID of the subject property is 10625. The current zoning of the classification of the property is R2, two-family district. If the replat is approved, the zoning classification of the subject property will remain R2, two-family district. This is basically the same thing we voted on and approved last meeting for the
Replat.
the transfer of the city property to the owner. And now we're voting to approve the ownership. Is that correct?
No, last meeting you approved a variance.
Right.
To the requirements that the code requires usually. So this time is actually, it's gonna be a replat, so it's just replatting, showing the updated.
Showing the updated.
Yeah.
Which
And we just need a motion, a second, a
which
majority.
they now belong. They now own.
Motion a second to get the discussion started.
Do we have a motion to this?
So motion.
Second,
I second that.
Any questions on, see, Commissioner Nix,
Nope.
Nope,
Commissioner Fielder,
nope.
Commissioner Griffin?
I have a general question. I don't know if it applies to this or not, but we can go ahead and finish this and I can ask it after the fact, however you want to work.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm still a little confused. I guess I could read about it, but I might get more confused. What is the difference between a variance and a special use? Or, ordinance that we pass, and the city council pass. What is the difference in those two?
So the variance is, so prime example for this plot, he should technically, because he's on a corner lot, have 12.5 feet from the edge of his house to the end of his property. And so because he doesn't have that, we're making a variance or an exception to that, so his house is still in a conforming use and not in a non-conforming use, right? And so he's not restricted on what they can and can't do. And then a special use, conditional use is like using your house for an Airbnb per se. Something that it's not intended to be used, but you can use it under or the approval of the city council.
So the variance, second one you mentioned, that wouldn't like fall under the umbrella of a spot zoning?
No,
No,
no, it has nothing to do with changing the zoning designation of that lot.
Mhm.
All we're doing is making an exception for what their setback is.
Okay, so if they sell the lot.
Mhm.
And a new owner has it, do they, and that exception or variance travels along with the deed?
It's
Permanent.
Okay, that's all I have.
Okay. We're ready to vote on this action item. Commissioner Nix,
Or approve.
Commissioner Fielder,
Yay.
Commissioner Griffith.
Yay.
It is unanimous, Commissioner, Chair votes aye.
Thank you. Perfect.
And I think that was it. Any board member comments?
Nope.
The meeting is adjourned. Time is 6:37.
Tommy,